Special guest in the studio today, Vagner Rocha has joined us for this week's episode of A Fistful of Collars. And man, Vagner, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm actually very pleased that we were able to bring you into the studio this time because you are, shall we say, you're a unique individual in jiu-jitsu. You're kind of a guy who's got a very interesting background, and you've been ruffling a few feathers lately, right? A lot of people are talking about you, both good and bad.
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's press, and it's a good thing, to make people unease and try to help change things that I think need to be changed. So I'm happy to be that guy if I need to be. So I'm glad to be here. I'm thankful for Flo and you guys to have me here and invite me to participate in this. I've watched this show many times, so it's a good feeling to be on this side.
You're just ego now. Come on, Vagner. You make me feel good.
I've watched many times.
That was quite the intro, Hal. Hey, we have Vagner Rocha here. You piss a lot of people off. What's up?
No, it is fair to say, though, right, that you are a polarizing figure in jiu-jitsu, right? Because everybody can agree. You are a pretty badass competitor, right? The results speak for themselves. How many times did you win ADCC trials?
I won ADCC trials 3 times. Been in the finals 4 times.
Hit the podium at ADCC Worlds.
Hit the last podium. Got 3rd place with Lepri and JT.
And you're a veteran of countless tournaments, super fights. You had a pretty solid MMA career as well. But
UFC, Bellator, Strikeforce,
you name it, right?
I've done it. The biggest events in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu I've participated in, medaled or done very well.
I really like the fact, though, and this is something that we've been chatting about a lot since we had you here in Austin in the office for the last couple of days, or for the last 24 hours or so, is that this phase of your career, while a lot of other people might be thinking about winding down and moving their focus away and on other things, is like you've actually sort of revitalized your career and you've dedicated yourself back to becoming a professional grappler. Now, how is that going to happen? Like, how did that come about?
It was by accident. I always had my eyesight on doing MMA because MMA helped pay the bills. I have a family and I have responsibilities of my own, and my gym wasn't always in its best place to pay those bills altogether. So it happened by accident. I just got dragged into my first professional jiu-jitsu fight, which then I pushed a lot of people over the edge. Let's just say that, right?
Because that was your first professional jiu-jitsu match. Was that fight to win in Florida in your hometown?
Yes.
Because you'd been off the scene for a little while, right? You dabbled. You'd kind of you were busy with MMA. You'd done ADCC, but your big comeback was that return, and you were on the fight to win, right?
Yeah, I was on the fight to win against AJ and that right there just put me on the map where some people didn't know who I was. They eventually
they kind of forgotten, I think, right?
I don't know. I feel like jiu-jitsu hasn't had good eyes to demonstrate and show all the people that are out there. There's a lot of really amazing competitors in the world, and grappling and also in jiu-jitsu. And I think like FloGrappling, for example, has really brought the eyes and ears to a lot of people, to really understand what jiu-jitsu is, and it didn't have that before. And events like Fight to Win and Kasai and all these other bigger events, they bring eyes to the sport, and then it's that, thank God, that drove me into professional grappling, which I didn't think existed, and now it does.
That's interesting. So what I'm getting from you there is that somebody who's been involved in jiu-jitsu and grappling and MMA a very long time. You got your black belt in 2007, right? Mm-hmm. So you've been around, right? Yeah. Definitely a veteran. But what you're saying is that the sport couldn't sustain a career as a professional grappler up until 2 years ago.
Yeah, I still feel like there's people out there that don't believe that you can actually make a living off jiu-jitsu, and I would say otherwise. I think you can if you're doing it right and you're fighting in the right places at the right time and actually doing well. You're going to be able to continuously stay busy. know,
But
I
you
get
have to
offers.
stay busy though, right?
You have to
It's
stay
not
busy.
quite
You-
quite like MMA. It's not quite the huge paydays.
No, it's
quite
not
yet.
huge paydays, but if you fight in a nice event every month, you know, you can make some money to survive, you know.
It's less taxing as well, right? Because
It's
you could do a jiu-jitsu super fight a couple times a month if you wanted
you can
to,
train
right?
jiu-jitsu year round. You don't need camps for jiu-jitsu, you know. You
but
can
with
train,
MMA, how many fights can you realistically do in a year?
yeah, it's much harder, you know. And you have to be selective, you know. If to fight MMA year round, you'd be broken within 2 years, you know. You'd probably be in a wheelchair. So, you know, we're jiu-jitsu, you know, we go in there, we get our rolls every day. You get, you know, a little bit of training, you know, you clean up what's needed and you keep it moving, you know.
When
So-
you prepare for a super fight, do you study your opponents, or you just train hard every day and get ready for anything that comes?
No, I give them due time. I study the person individually, and I kind of look over the things that they do best, and I try to do my best to stay out of those things, you know. So yeah, I do study. I feel like it's important. Some people don't, you know. I have friends
Some
that
people
are,
don't like to, right?
Some people don't even look at their guys. They don't even
Yeah.
want to know. You know, I want to know. I rather know than approach a match and fall into something that I could have easily avoided because I watched over what the guy likes doing. You know, like myself. If you had to fight me, I would be like, am I gonna do that? Nope. Am I gonna do this? Nope. You know, I'm gonna watch over because it's. I mean, I'm pretty generic if you really think about it. I do a lot of the same things over and over again. But
I wouldn't say generic because you know you're a specialist in certain areas, but it's no secret what you like, right?
No, it's no secret, and I try to force people into my game, you know, and that's what makes my jiu-jitsu special.
Interesting. I'm really intrigued about this kind of the development of professional grappling because I mean you've done open tournaments, you know, we've
Yes, I
seen
have.
you compete, but you really seem to like to go on the stage, you know, compete under the bright lights, whether it's Kasai, whether it's Fight to Win, you know, why is that? Is it anything to do with your time in MMA or anything like that, or?
I feel like you know, the super fights are way more entertaining, you know, and it takes a special kind of person to fight a super fight and actually draw fans out of it. And that's something I feel like I do really well. I go in there and I perform at my ultimate best, and I push myself. I give 150% every time I'm out there. I'm not trying to just squeak a match away, and you know, nobody's paying to watch that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The promoters are not paying for that. You know, the spectators are not paying for that. The people in the crowd are not paying for that. Nobody wants to see two guys go in there and just kind of barely try to win a match over the other. You know, they want to see a fight. They
It's
want to see two
entertainment,
guys
right?
go out there and freaking go nuts on each other, try to get the win. You know, but you know,
You feel
sometimes
that that's what you bring to the table?
I feel like every time I go out there, you're gonna guaranteed you got 15 minutes of me of going forward. You know.
15 minutes of violence.
Violence. That's exactly it. Violence.
Yo, Chase, actually, you made an awesome highlight of some of Wagner's best moments
Amazing.
from the last couple of years, and we called it, you know, the violent jiu-jitsu. And
It's true. It's a comeback, right? It kind of.
Yeah.
It was funny because I feel like you're almost a precursor to this everyday Pojada movement, the no Nutella stuff. You know, you were really going hard with that 2 years ago, and now it seems commonplace. Like guys maybe are a little bit meaner today. I don't know. Josh Hinger's another great example. Someone that doesn't really give a shit and will be really rude in a match, but he's fighting to win. You know, it's
part of the game,
competitive,
right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you think that there's a divide there, though, that some people don't like it, and that's maybe the wrong way to look at it? Or there was a big reaction. I'm speaking about the Python choke, right? A lot of people kind of came after you a little bit, said that's not jiu-jitsu, that's
man.
fighting, or that's dirty.
And it was a majority from the Brazilian crowd. I feel like the Brazilians that do jiu-jitsu in Brazil, I believe, I would say, because of the majority of the comments I was reading, you know, there was a lot of Americans on there as well, but there was a lot of the Brazilians in there, and I feel like they don't understand what I was doing and why I was doing that. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't like I was doing that to a freaking bum. You know what I mean? The guy that I was on the other end of that is a multiple-time world champion, one of the freaking greatest guys in jiu-jitsu, probably be, you know, in the history books with the rest of us. You know,
We're talking about Tanquinho, of
yeah,
course, right?
Augusto Mendes. Yeah, my guy's a freaking legend, dude. Guy beat Cobrinha and Rafael Mendes in the same day in the tournament. I mean, how many guys can say they've done that? You know what I mean?
Not many.
Yeah, man.
One.
So yeah, one exactly. So you know, it's you know, it's the effectiveness of the movement, and people were use the right word, they were hating on it. You know, they're like, oh, that's not jiu-jitsu, that's ugly. My brother, if I got to your back and I trapped your arms and I had you in that position, it's effective. It works because if it can get done to you, it can be done to anybody. So, I mean,
what do you think the problem was with it then? Because the comments were kind of like, oh, it's not real jiu-jitsu. But what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? I don't understand either. I mean, I guess they were upset at the fact that I was covering his mouth, you know? Let's look back at an arm bar or a triangle or any submission. Your arm bar guy's trying to break your arm. Often people get their arms broken in competition trying to escape an arm bar, or
we've seen it happen a lot,
go to sleep, you know what I mean? Like where they're getting woken up by a choke. So, I mean, the effectiveness of what I was doing, you know, I had his arms trapped, I'm covering his mouth. I'm trying to get him to raise his neck so I can go underneath. And that's a move. And I actually tapped people with it, you know, and I had many people with it, actually. And one in competition, and that one was the original one that I did that made people upset.
Combat jiu-jitsu?
The combat jiu-jitsu one. That made people freaking mad, you know, and then...
No, that's weird, because the combat jiu-jitsu is meant to be even more like a fight.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It seems like anything should go in there.
Yeah,
and it seems like we're all like, oh well, screw those guys because their opinion doesn't matter, and it's not the case. Like, you know, I'm happy to kind of like stay in the middle here. And
it might be the case for me. I don't know.
Chase is like, screw those guys. But I'm genuinely interested to kind of find out what people's problem is with it, because my personal opinion is that jiu-jitsu is meant to be effective regardless of the situation, whether it is, you know, a sport jiu-jitsu match, or whether it's a self-defense situation, or MMA fight, or a life and death, you know. And ultimately that's what jiu-jitsu is about. It's being able to work in any of those, right? And you know, if we train like we say we do, you should be able to deal with that. And if worst comes to the worst, it's in a match, you tap out. It's no big deal. So I'm wondering why people were freaking out so much that what you did was considered, I don't know, dare I say, dirty?
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that I was covering his mouth. I think that might have been what got people upset. You guys, it threw me off. There was some, you know, random nobodies in there saying, "Hey, you can't do that." And then there was people that were like legitimate and famous, like Verdum came on the FloGrappling thing. It was like, "Oh, that guy, I can't believe he did that." And I'm like, Verdum, I've seen you fight many times. You're like dirty as dirty gets. You know what I mean? The guy comes out to touch gloves and flying kicks the guy in the chest. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that, you know. Who are you to step on that line and say, oh, that's dirty or that's not? It's a fight, you know, and in love and war, there's no rules, you know what I mean? Like, unless there's rules written. If
there's a few rules in jiu-jitsu, but...
Yeah, if you can say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, you know, we were an event that was clearly allowed to do that. If you're allowed to do it, you should be exploring those lines, you know what I mean?
When we were even watching some of your matches yesterday, right, and you know, there was a match of you in an IBJJF tournament, and you were on the back, but you didn't touch a guy's face at one moment, because it was against the rules,
I had the
right?
option, exactly, and I knew that if I did that, I was going to be penalized, so I didn't do it, you know? And you see events changing rules left and right now for either to adapt to make it better, you know, to say, all right, that's legal, you can do this, or to be like, no, clearly this is not illegal, you know, you can't do that, you know what I mean? So
do you like having the kind of the kind of the variety of rule sets out there now? Because there's obviously the points tournaments with things like, you know, no slams, no heel hooks, and then you have a lot of the submission only where there's a lot more permitted, and then there's points tournaments where you can heel hook. There's a lot more than it seems that there once was, right? How do you feel about that?
I feel there's there's rules for tournaments, there's rules for spectators, there's rules for athletes. You know, I think each rule serves a purpose. If I had to choose one to say, oh, which one's the best one, I think we should favor the rules that favor the audience, you know, the ones, the people that are going to watch. So, you know, how often you see matches where guys are sitting there and they're stalling their brain out to try to just win the match to get to the next phase, you know, and they're not really showcasing jiu-jitsu, you know, and that's something that's not going to make spectators watch, you know what I mean? We're trying to gain audience. We're trying to change people's mind about what jiu-jitsu is and how effective it could be. If the submission isn't the most important thing in the match, then there's a problem.
What are we doing?
There's a problem. There's a problem, you know?
But I'll flip the script a little bit. I think that really, really good jiu-jitsu is almost boring because it's controlling. Jiu-jitsu for me is control, then submission. And man, sometimes like if you're working away, going for the sub, it can be a really grinding approach. And sometimes the spectator-friendly rule set or that mindset can maybe stand the guys up, get them going again, or I don't know, maybe overtime rules, for example. To me, overtime isn't really true jiu-jitsu. It's super spectator-friendly. It's weighted so heavily on that. And I think there may be it's a hard balance to find is what I'm trying to get at. Maybe.
It depends on what you're trying to sell. You know what I mean? If you have an event and you're trying to promote, spectator friendly, and you're trying to promote an audience, then you got to figure out the rules. It's back to what I was saying. If you're trying to just figure out who the best guy out of 100 is, then you have to look at the way the format's going to be and the rules. Jiu-jitsu still has a long ways to go to it becomes friendly enough that your grandmother can watch and understand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I personally feel like submission is the way. You know what I mean? Like you put two guys.
When you say submission is what you mean, like submission only?
I think like fight to win rules is the way. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
Where you get two guys in front of each other and they go crazy on each other, and at the end you can go, that guy's the winner. Clearly, that guy's the winner. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not by what positional. I mean, how often you see a guy sit on bottom and throw up triangles and almost kill the guy with the triangle and choke him to death, and then suddenly that guy uses that triangle to pass his guard and hold him and then wins the match. Who really won that match?
I guess it depends who you're talking to.
Right.
Yeah, it depends on the
Who
rules.
really won the match?
Right. Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, honestly, I think the guy who was on bottom trying to tap the other guy out, he's the winner. Not the guy who barely passed the guard for 3 seconds and then got pushed back to guard and then was back in that struggle of trying to survive.
So you obviously favor attacking jiu-jitsu, fight-ending submissions.
Fight-ending submissions. Because, again, that relates back to self-defense. That relates back to fighting. That relates back to survival. Survival is the key,
How about when you train and when you teach? Are you using those kind of techniques? The ones that you unleash that we see you do in the competition. That's they're not nice techniques, right? Let's say it nice. Say it
they
as
walk
it
the
is,
line, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not rule breaking, but they're they're pushing the rules to the limits. They're testing the rules to the limits.
They're testing the other guy.
They're testing the other guy.
Definitely.
I mean, we've been rolling with you a little bit the last 24 hours, and we got to feel some of the pressure, right? And it's
how did you feel?
Pretty miserable.
It's effective, man. Like, I don't want to be there. I'll give you what you want to go away.
But what I'm wondering is that, I mean, you kind of being nice with us, right? You were kind of giving us a little taste.
I roll with you just like I roll with my students.
So when you were
Unless
training,
I'm rolling with like high level competitors, like my level, then I turn it to that next level.
You'll take it up again.
I take it a notch up, yeah. But the way I roll with you guys is the way I roll with my students, and I teach them and I explain to them like, hey, you shouldn't allow me to do this because this could happen. You know what I mean? And I teach them and I allow them to work like that with each other. I feel like that makes them better. And if they go to an event to compete or to fight, they're ready for that.
Right.
There's nothing surprising them in the gym. You know what I mean? They're not going to get caught off guard by a guy who's posting his hand on his face or an elbow in his ribs or something that's like, oh, you would think is dirty, but let's be realistic. It's not really dirty. It's a fight. You know what I mean?
So they're not going to freak out and start looking to the referee midway through the match like, oh, help.
That happens to me all the time. How often am I in a match and I look at the guy and he's looking at the referee? I'm like, why are your eyes off me? You know what I mean? Why would you take your eyes off somebody in a fight? It's not smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Marcel held. Oh, what's happening over here? What's this guy doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to keep going with that.
Yeah, that's hurting you, I guess. Yeah, man. I mean, it just doesn't. I don't get it.
You mentioned the Marcin Held match. That was Kasai Pro, the tournament there where you had a great run. You got the wrist lock against Marcin. You submitted Iwasaki with the heel hook, and then you had that kind of barn burner, very close match with Renato Canuto in the final. That particular show for me, that was one of the best displays of your jiu-jitsu because we got to see a bit of everything in those matches, right?
Yeah, I wasn't scared to fight. Those are the rules I said that are fan friendly. You know what I mean? When you can go in there, and again, each rule, right? If you look at it, the system that they ran on that tournament, it makes it exciting for people to go out there and watch because you got to go out there and fight to win. You know what I mean? You got to fight to submit your guy, and you got to go forward.
You like the round robin format on Kasai as well?
Yeah, I have great cardio. I can go for 3 hours straight without getting tired. And people tell me all the time, like, I don't know how you do it, but that's because I train in that manner. So that tournament format, that to me is like, it's awesome. I feel like I get going as the later the rounds, the better I get.
And when other guys are getting tired,
I'm getting better. Yeah,
right.
That's exactly it. So
now, speaking of Kasai, you were originally scheduled to compete next week in Dallas. You had a super fight schedule with Matthias Lutz, I believe, and that was going to be a rematch because you guys fought last year on Kasai Pro. So can you tell us what happened while you were out?
Man, I had an injury that is going to keep me out, and it's fortunate. I really do enjoy those events, especially like Kasai. I think it's one of the best events out now. and I had to withdraw. I couldn't. Not only am I super busy with things that are happening in my personal life, I'm moving my school. I released a new DVD, and then I got injured. So it's just a lot got stacked against me, and I said, you know what, I'm very competitive, and I don't want to go out there to, have a bad performance and show ass. You know what I mean? I wanted to go out there and do my best and entertain people. So I figured I'd pull away and give somebody else another chance at doing that for Kasai, because that's the right thing to do.
How long do you think roughly before we'll see you back in action? Because I know people want to see you compete.
Probably a couple weeks more until I start really training hard again,
Gotcha.
and I get healthy, and then probably by April you probably see me. Fight to Win is coming to Florida, and I would like to be on that card. I told Seth, I have 2 titles on Fight to Win. I have a lightweight title and a welterweight title. I would like to face somebody that's worthy of that challenge. Big name would be nice. I'm not calling anybody out, but
and then plans. The one thing that we've been talking to a lot of people is, of course, it's ADCC year, right?
This is my dream. That's the everything right now. This is the year that I'm focusing on that, and clean up all the things that I feel like I need to make better, and get on track. So that I can get that gold medal that I should have gotten in 2017.
What's the hardest part about adapting to ADCC? Because it's a very unique rule set, and you have to be good in all areas, including wrestling and leg locks and
those overtimes.
Overtimes are crazy.
Cardio.
Yeah. What are the biggest modifications to your training to get ready for ADCC?
I think for me, it's and I've told everybody that goes to compete in that event. I get a lot of people always questioning me like, "Hey, I'm going to the trials to try to win. What do I do? What do I focus on?" I think the number one thing that people really mess up at the ADCC is they don't understand the rules. And if you don't understand the rules, you can make such careless mistakes. You can make a mistake, whereas you're winning the match and you make a mistake and you're like, dang, I lost. You know what I mean? Like my first example, first time I ever won the trials, I had a great run for guys like Gary Tonin and JT Torres who were in the trials the same year. And I got to the finals, and then in the finals, I had this match against this kid who I used to train with, and I used to do really well against him in the gym. Like I consistently dominated him in the gym. But when we went to the tournament, we ended up in the finals against each other, and he freaking made my life so hard. And I mean, I submitted everybody all the way up to the finals, and then this guy in the finals, we had a 20-minute match. But in the last 2 minutes of the match, I was posting on his neck, and he went for a flying armbar. And I stuffed it, rolled through, and ended up on top. And he got a -1 for it. And it makes me think, like, guys don't understand the rules. I would have never pulled for a flying armbar and just hung out on bottom once I'd missed. You know what I mean? Because if you pull,
it's gonna score
against you. You know what I mean? You got to know the rules. You know what I mean? Like maybe if
ADCC
he had gotten
rules are very, very specific as well. They're very unique, aren't they? It's like you don't really get that much opportunity to compete under those rules anywhere else. So.
No, it's definitely unique, and you gotta be smart to everything that could possibly work against you. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys, I can't say that I'm perfect in that tournament. But I definitely know the rules really well. I've messed up with the rules too myself. I feel like maybe my last loss at the last ADCC in the finals, on the semifinals against Lucas Lepri, might have been a mess up on my understanding of the rules. I don't know.
That match, I mean,
it was razor close.
But you had his back, but they was like just with the one hook, and you hit the takedown and stuff. So
I had a beautiful takedown.
What do you think it was that kind of let that slip away from you?
I try to question the referees to ask them, but they don't want to give me an answer. But then the more I studied it, I watched it a couple times afterwards to kind of like try to understand like on outside perspective. And I feel like maybe he was pushing the overtime with like, he had these like fake takedowns. Like he would grab a single leg and at the same time he was grabbing it, but it wasn't like he was grabbing it to really finish it.
It was non-committal.
Like he was grabbing my leg and I was hopping, trying to trap him in the kimuras. And he knew it, so it was like he was grabbing it just to kind of show face as if he was doing something.
Right.
And then I pushed him out, and I shot on his legs, and it was back and forth. But maybe he was trying to press like as he was more active, and I think that might have been the reason why they gave it to him. But I really don't see it that way. I mean, being in the match today, looking at it, going, I mean, it's the only thing I can see that they could say, like, oh, yeah, he went for a couple single legs. He actually picked up your leg. But it was like he was picking up my leg, and I was like looking at the referee, like, come on, man, there's nothing here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm waiting for him to make a mistake, you know. But it is what it is, you know.
It's crazy because that was a 30-minute match as well, right?
Yeah, it was a
10-minute
long match.
regulation and then 2 10-minute overtimes.
No, it was one overtime.
Oh, just one overtime, right?
Yeah,
okay.
it was still a long match, you know.
Wow, yeah,
Against
that
one
is
of the
long.
best in the world.
Yeah, right.
So.
What did you think about? You hear about Lucas? He competed at the Europeans just last week.
Yeah, man. I saw some of the matches.
How do you feel about sort of seeing a guy like that go in and then he fought like 350+ pound guys.
Yeah, and then Kynan, who's not 300 pounds but a beast, super
200
heavyweight,
plus.
100
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I think it's cool that he went out there and tried to showcase his jiu-jitsu and show the effectiveness of how good he really is, and he didn't have to stay within his his weight class. He's a lightweight, you know what I mean? And he moved into a group where it's giants, and you can see some of the guys who look like towering over him, and he still went in there and subbed them and made it look easy, So I applaud him. I think it's amazing to see things like that, and we don't see that often. I actually personally love doing absolutes. I think it's fun, you know what I mean, to go in there and measure size with somebody that's a little bit bigger than you. But it's not everybody that's about that life.
Well, so, we're talking a little bit about you appreciate the fact that he did the absolute and, that he challenged himself in that way. But I'd like to know that who does Vagner Rocha like to watch? Which competitors do you watch and you think, man, I like that guy's jiu-jitsu or I like his spirit or wherever it might be?
I watch a diverse group of guys.
Yeah.
Lepre is definitely one of them. Guys like, Andre Galvon, I think is amazing. They were talking to the new generation, but I personally have been watching the generation before the generation that's out now. Guys like Leo Vieira, those are guys that I used to watch, and I'm like, try to steal as much as I can out of what I see. Some of that dynamic approaches. It's a diverse group. But personally, there's one guy in general that I've watched over the years that I've stolen a lot of techniques from. That I think to me I think he's the GOAT in jiu-jitsu of all time. It's Marcelo Garcia.
Yeah. Not too many people would disagree with that. I think Marcelo proved I think through his accomplishments alone that he is definitely one of the greatest of all times. But what is it that was special about him as opposed to some of the other accomplished guys out there?
He's that guy who would consistently chase the submission. If you watch him, I don't know if he ever fought a match to not submit his opponent. You know what I mean? I think every match in his mind was like, I got to submit you. Right. And there was no points in front of him that were actually holding him back. And you can tell he was never like score and look up at the clock to see if he scored. You know what I mean? He was the guy who was like score and try to, either grab your arm, grab your neck, and just keep chasing you until he tapped you, I watched a lot of him at ADCC, firsthand, like up front, like front row and center, So, I think he's, easily, probably the best guy of all time. If you look at his accomplishments and his size, and what he's done, he's great, man.
He's not some 260-pound, freight train, right?
So. No, he's not. He's not a Buchecha, you know what I mean? I love Buchecha, he's my friend, but it's hard to say Hardra Gracie and Buchecha are the best guys of all time. They have a huge advantage over guys like me, they tower over us, you know what I mean? Plus, don't get me wrong, they have amazing jiu-jitsu. Their jiu-jitsu is clean, technique is perfect, but we're talking about a guy who's small, a guy who would go into absolutes. He's a guy who went into many absolutes, he didn't win any of them, but he got to the podium several times, in ADCC and Worlds, if I'm not mistaken. So, I honestly, to me, he's the GOAT, And he's still young, man. We're the same age.
Even T's coming back to Kasai, right? We were all hoping that might happen someday. So
if they need an opponent for him, keep me in mind.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Because he did say that if he was going to come back, that he'd love to do it in New York, and that's like Kasai's territory, right?
You could put me in, sign me up. I'm there.
Oh, there you go.
Like I said, I'm a huge fan, but I'll be first in line to raise my hand if they call for somebody to go against him.
Just because that one a show, right?
Yeah, just because of the respect factor. I'm gonna fight him like I would fight, anybody else. You know what I mean? But I just feel like that's it, man. That's the GOAT of jiu-jitsu, and I get a chance at going out there and proving that I'm in that same same line, and that's a guy I know. I think I know his jiu-jitsu like the palm of my hand. I know exactly which direction he's going.
I'm not sure there are many people in jiu-jitsu who have been studied more than Marcelo, right? He was a reference point for so long like his techniques.
It's true. Yeah, he puts himself out there. You know, you see his MG in action and videos consistently. You know, he's
Never been
definitely
shy in sharing that, right?
Nope. He's a guy who's just, you know, he's perfect for what we do. You know, he's a guy who's just shares, you know, and it's important. You know?
You're kind of like that too. You've put out a couple DVDs recently, and what do you think about people who are a little bit more secretive about their technique?
I think it's wrong. I think you know, if you're scared of showing what you do best, then you're not gonna, you know, let the rest of the world build. You know what I mean? You need people like us to share knowledge and explain things to make others better. You know what I mean? Not everybody has the same eyesight that I feel like the high level competitors have. You know, like I'm the kind of guy, if you did something to me once, I'm gonna go, all right, I see it. You know, like and I adapt and correct. You know what I mean? And not everybody's like that. So you need people like us to help others to evolve and to make the art better, you know?
Have you ever felt that you gave away too much? Have you ever felt in competition like, oh man, this guy knows what I'm doing, or he studied me?
No, because it's one thing to study and know and watch, and it's another to feel and let it happen, you know? Like we were doing Kimuras today, you were like, I see it,
It
I
was
understand
different.
It's different, you know what I mean? It's different when you're in that hole and you're stuck, you know what I mean? It's not the same. So, yeah, you can teach the move all day, but until you feel the actual person do it to you, then you can't, you know.
I'd like to know, actually, you know, you have a very distinct game, and you explained that a lot of that is kind of like self-discovery and you know, developing it yourself. But I'd like to know, you know, if there was anybody in particular, or if it was a specific thing that was like an influenced your game. Because, you know, how did you develop what you do?
I developed it through, you know, the training partners I had and the people that I was, you know, consistently on day in, day out involved with. They pushed me to become better, and you know, and propelled me to, you know, to the game I have today. So the gym I started in was at Pablo Popovich's gym in Fort Lauderdale, and Cyborg used to train with us. And at the gym we trained at, there was a lot of high level wrestlers, high level wrestlers, and I got taken down a lot over and over again, and got stuck on bottom a lot. And eventually I put in my brain that I needed to learn how to wrestle. And before I actually learned how to wrestle, I learned how to counter wrestle. So meaning I would use their shots to kind of counter them and scramble around them and trap them.
So that's, you know, where the whole kind of like Kimura system came from?
Yep, the Kimura system came from that. And then, you know, I always had an amazing guard. You know, when I was a brown belt, I think I always said, I don't need to learn how to wrestle. I want to be on bottom playing guard, because that's much more effective. And then I realized that it's not that effective when you got a guy who's got an amazing base and doesn't get swept that easy. And I from there I started to pick off their games and my tribulations of, you know, getting wrecked, and understanding what I should and shouldn't do, and evolving by learning, you know, through what's happening inside the school. You know,
you've been quite fortunate as well in that you know, you've had some very, very high level mentors throughout your journey, right? But you've also I'm not sure if it's just location or if it's the people around you, but you've had access to train with like a ton of high level guys at some point or another, right?
Yeah, man.
How so? How's that worked out?
Florida is a stomping ground for some of the best guys in the world. You know, people don't have Florida on the map that way. I mean, I'm sure some, they're like, hey, the guys that really know jiu-jitsu know that Florida is. But Florida, man, started, American Top Team was started in Florida, which is a huge jiu-jitsu backbone. It's a leftover of the guys that came out of Carlson Gracie. So a lot of old school guys like Ricardo Liborio is down there. And he brought a whole crew of guys, and I was able to fortunately train with the beginning of American Top Team. And Pablo Popovich was my instructor, and he was part of American Top Team. And then Cyborg made his way to Miami, and we all started training together. And man, we've hosted guys down there. You know, like Buchecha stayed like 2 years with us, and I trained with him a ton. Palito, a bunch of guys from Checkmat and guys from Braza, and we had a camp once. I told you guys this earlier. We had in 2007.
Yeah, tell us who was on the mat for that camp.
2007, we had an ADCC camp where Leo Vieira, Andre Galvão, Cavaca, Marcelo Osado, Lucas Leite, Pancho, Ricardo Vieira. I mean,
some serious guys right now.
Yeah, man,
That's a tough room.
Yeah.
Dude, it was like the who's who of jiu-jitsu. And, you know, these guys were trained. They trained for 2 months straight in Florida.
And who were you at the time? What were you like?
I was a brown belt at the time. And these guys, I was like I was like the main training partner for like Leo Vieira and Andre Galvão. Wow. And I was just getting wrecked over and over and over. I've never done a private lesson with anybody in my whole life in jiu-jitsu. First off, it's expensive to do a private lesson. And second, I just, never had the like feeling like I need to do a private lesson with this guy because, most people I'm very friendly and I ask and they answer, But I remember after I trained with Leo for the first time, I was like, yo, I got to do a private lesson with this guy because he just made me feel like a little kid. Like it did, like nothing worked, And he's the only guy in this, he should feel special, Leo. I hope you're watching.
Again, another great influence in jiu-jitsu.
He's one of those guys I watched as well,
And now founder of Checkmat Team, obviously co-founder of Checkmat Team, just continuing that legacy. But
yeah,
so
man.
You've been exposed to, just the names that you mentioned there, just such a wide variety of different styles, different philosophies of jiu-jitsu. It kind of, all of that, just being exposed to that and all of that feeding into your own game. I guess it kind of explains why you've got quite a well-rounded jiu-jitsu in there now, right? Because you're not just like focused on one specific thing. Like people don't look at you and they, he's just a leg lock guy, or he's just a guard player. Like you actually have like a pretty comprehensive jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, up until I was a brown belt, all I did was guard, and then I had to learn how to wrestle, and then I learned how to be on top, and now it looks more like I play top and wrestle and take the back at will, but it's not the complete system that I have, and that's what I've actually, to be honest with you, I've tried to tell myself over the last couple of years that I need to expose those avenues that I have that I don't do. Like I don't often pull guard anymore, and I know I can do it, but when it comes time to compete, you have that little feeling in your stomach. You're like, no, you got to stick to your guns. You got to try to force the person to make a mistake in what you do best, and
we see you pull guard sometimes, though.
I have.
We see you like pull into like half, right?
I pull to a half. I pull into that Lucas Leite coyote guard. I like that one a lot. Learned it from himself. So yeah, I use I attack the legs if I need. So it's a matter of trying to branch out.
If you could start over and build yourself, knowing what you know now from the beginning, how would you start your foundation in jiu-jitsu? What's most important for a beginner? How can they improve and like really get going on the right foot?
I feel like I was fortunate enough to do that by the fact that when I started jiu-jitsu, I was young and I was small.
How old were you when you started?
I was like 18 is when I really got started. And I was skinny, I was like 150 pounds with my frame now. So I was very scrawny, so I was able to...
Hey, you can be pretty ripped at 150.
Yeah, I was skinny though. I'm not a muscular guy. If you see me without a shirt, I'm like not muscular at all. I think the most muscular I've ever been was that ADCC there that we did, the last Finland one. That was like my rippedest point of my life. And that was me really being very strict with my diet, and I stayed really skinny for, I was like 165 pounds. I was trying to stay under the weight so that I didn't struggle to have to make the weight.
Yeah, you don't have that like blown up physique like you see a lot of guys do, right?
Jacked with muscle. If I put that on my body, I think I'll be 185 pounds. So I can't. It's just not. It's not on me. But I think the number one thing you could learn as a beginner is your guard. I think guard is the hardest part to learn. Gravity's against you, and you see a lot of guys that learn top first. They learn how to play on top first. They never want to play guard, because once you play on your back, it just feels like you're like, oh my God, this sucks. So if you learn how to play guard first and then you learn how to play on top, actually it feels harder than it really is, because then when you get on top, you're like, you never feel like strong. You never feel like you have a good base. But if you learn how to play bottom first and then you learn how to play top, it actually becomes easier to adapt. But it's harder to do the other way around. So definitely I think bottom first, then top, then learn some top wrestling, judo, something that can make your base on top stronger, and then adapt the diversity of the game, where legs, the upper body, lower body,
then you can branch out.
You can branch out to everything,
Well, speaking of the legs, this is it's kind of a really hot topic in jiu-jitsu for like the last year and a half, 2 years, I guess. Is the leg lock systems, right? Because the Danaher Death Squad, John Danaher's students from Henzo's, who you have a lot of experience of competing against. Yep. They were the kind of the guys to really put leg locks back on the map, because they've always existed in jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
We saw guys like Dean Lister and other specialists going into ADCC and winning gold. But they dropped off the map, and then the submission only kind of allowed them to come back. So how do you feel about that coming around? Because I know you appreciate the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. So when the leg lock game came back around, how did you feel about that?
I think it's important. I think, I'll be honest with you. I'm going to say this, and it's going to ruffle some people's feathers. But I feel like if the tournament you're in has restrictions on the things you do, then it's actually slowing down your jiu-jitsu. So what I mean by that is I think everything should be fair game. I think it should be of course, I'm not telling you to freaking, fish hook your opponents or eye gouge them. That's
You're talking about jiu-jitsu techniques.
Jiu-jitsu techniques. Like, there should be no restriction on any jiu-jitsu techniques at any belt level. There should be.
Really?
Like
that's
purple.
A bold statement.
Yes, it's a huge statement, because I feel like there needs to be an awareness from the day one. If you have like, I can't do this until purple belt, then you train all the way up to purple belt with this mentality of like, I can't do this until I'm a purple belt, and then you're learning from that point on. How many years does it take to get a purple belt? It takes 4 years, 3 years. You've wasted 3 years of your time. You never learned that part of the game. Now you're like a beginner, and now you kind of hate it. You're like, I hate that. I don't want to do that. I dislike that. I don't want to be. That doesn't need to be. It needs to be. It needs to be involved the minute you start to train, so that you're never caught off guard, and you never have that feeling like, I don't want to do this because it's not part of my jiu-jitsu. That I personally, that's how I learned jiu-jitsu. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was learning jiu-jitsu to fight MMA.
From day one.
From day one. So people were ripping heel hooks and straight foot locks, and they didn't care what belt level I was. So I had to learn how to defend myself, and that made me, respect the move. And I'm actually the first person I ever tapped. First time I ever tapped a black belt, I was a blue belt, and I tapped him with a straight foot lock, and the guy got so upset with me. I remember like it was today.
Don't touch my feet.
He was like, "That's wrong. You can't do that. It's illegal." And I looked at him. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You can't do that in jiu-jitsu tournaments." I said, "But I don't plan on doing jiu-jitsu tournaments." And he goes,
checkmate.
And he had this look. He was like dumbfounded. He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, I want to fight MMA. And he's like, "All right." And the conversation ended. And the guy never trained with me again.
Wow.
He was like a staple at the school. He never wanted to train with me again. I remember him just like, he would avoid me. And I would be like thinking in my head, like, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? You know what I mean? And that's the mentality that if you start at a level, if you start for 4 years of your life and you say, you know what, this line is wrong, you can't do this, then when you have to cross that line, and you have somebody who does it all the time, you're going to get caught off guard, and you're going to dislike it, and you're going to, that's why people dislike footlocks. How many guys in jiu-jitsu don't like the legs? They're like, oh, that's cheating. That's cheating.
I think it's come back around now.
It's coming around a little bit now. We're talking about,
right?
It's already been 3 years into this since it first came hot, you know what I mean? So it takes time, right?
Question for you though, and this actually came in the comments on a YouTube stream about, agreed, all submissions legal, but like, what about kids and what about beginners? I mean, do you have white and blue belts like foot lock at each other at your academy?
I do. White belts, yeah. I teach them right off rip. Like they're learning from day one.
Wow.
How to defend, how to attack, where they should be, where they shouldn't be.
Is this a straight foot lock or heel hooks and toe holds and stuff in there too?
I'm talking everything. I try to keep them out of doing it in the gi, because the friction in the gi does help trap the legs. But I have no restriction on teaching my students things like that. They need to learn. And to be honest with you, my 12-year-old son knows how to heel hook like a G. I tell him all the time. I tell him like, don't do that to kids. Don't do that in tournaments. But I want him to know, you know what I mean? I don't want him to be that kid who eventually grows up into becoming one of the best in the world and not know that game, you know what I mean? Or not have an idea where to go, I
mean, we've seen that happen. We've seen like world-class black belts go into...
Lost.
Yeah, go into ADCC and they have no idea.
Like Leandro Lowe against Craig Jones, that he looked lost, and I was watching the way he was running. And I'm like, dude, you're going the wrong way. You're going to get caught. He hurt himself with that heel hook before he had to give up his back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, Leandro's one of the best guys in the world.
Right.
That's back to the line again. That line was drawn in the sand so long ago that he doesn't know any better,
What do you think needs to change then if there is like a growing awareness and a growing acceptance of leg locks in jiu-jitsu, and it's definitely growing,
Of course.
What do you think needs to happen for people to kind of fully embrace it?
I think there needs to be a change in rules.
Do you think
know?
that will be the kind of the
in the biggest tournaments in the world? I don't want to name any of them, but
so that'll be the motivation then for everybody to understand. Okay, no excuses now. We got to do this.
Look, I'm going to give you another example. Look at how well Gordon did in this last Nogi Worlds, because he understood the line that he could and couldn't cross, and how he was using that butterfly lift honey hole to trap guys and sweep him. He was just using that. That was what he was winning with.
Right.
The guys were like, like I saw 2 or 3 guys in different matches with him that he trapped them, and they were like looking at the referee like, look what this guy's doing over here. He's got my leg. He's laced on the inside. He should be disqualified. They had no idea.
Right.
They didn't know where they were. They didn't know how to get out of that. And then they were getting swept, and then he was getting on top, crushing them, passing.
It's very smart of him to really.
And then he put it on the
make an
internet
effort of learning the rules.
He made it an effort to make sure that the referees knew the rules.
Yeah.
He didn't make it sure that the athletes knew the rules, because the athletes really don't like him. He made it sure that the referees knew the rules so that he could use it in his advantage. But to be honest with you, if you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you should know everything. You should have a huge, broad spectrum of all attacks, and legs are definitely part of the game. It should be 100%. You know what I mean?
I definitely think you're onto something there, because I'm not a competitor by any stretch of the imagination, but when I train, I think about what I'm competing for next. I'm like, okay, I got this IBJJF thing coming up. I'm not going to roll for toe holds because I'm still a purple belt. So that extends all the way through. And if, like you were saying, you have years of training where you're really heavily into competition, you might not know what a knee bar is, or might not know how to defend one, or I don't know.
You don't even see it coming sometimes,
Sure.
Yeah. You see guys that have that. I've seen black belts that come to my gym and then they're rolling with my blue belts that do attack heel hooks. I have a blue belt that's in my school now. He's been training a year, and the guy's a phenom at legs. You know what I mean? Like, he goes in and out of legs. And I watch higher level guys train with him, and I'm like, they have no idea what he's doing. You can see it from the outside. You watch it, and you're like, he doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't even know how to defend that. You know what I mean? And it's important that you know the game. You know what I mean? Because it's, again, you're a black belt. I feel like it would actually help jiu-jitsu big time too. How often you see guys move from one belt to the next so fast? They go from white to blue in a year, blue to purple in another year, because they're winning big tournaments. And it's because, of course, they're doing well and they're good, but I feel like there's so much that they're missing in that big jump. You know what I mean? That, maybe they hang out in brown belt a little longer, or a little purple belt a little longer.
Interesting.
If there's more
for them to do there.
Exactly.
Question for you, and this is another one that's coming from the Facebook stream this time, is that what do you think will be the next jiu-jitsu trend after leg locks? Because leg locks came along, and it's so hot right now. Everybody's talking about leg locks, but after a while, it'll just become a standard part of jiu-jitsu that people will accept. So we saw it over the last years. We've seen lots of different things, like the 50-50 guard came along, and now it's a fundamental position. We've seen things like the berimbolo that came along, and now you have everybody doing it from blue belt through to black. So after the leg locks, which is kind of what's currently happening, what do you see as a future jiu-jitsu trend that may come along?
I'm gonna have to say the float passing. I'm gonna say that because it's my own part of my own system now, and I see guys like Gordon as well doing it. And, he's a hot topic in jiu-jitsu.
So you think that actually that your particular system of passing is quite similar to what he's been talking about lately?
Yeah, we're about on the same line right there. We're walking the same line in maybe in different directions, maybe in the same direction. I don't know what he's got. I don't know what he's doing with it. I haven't watched. I've seen him in competition, but the brand is the same. And I think that's the way to actually pass the guard of guys who like attacking the legs. That's the reason why he does it. Because he's training it against his own people in his gym, and I think that's the next big step in jiu-jitsu, gi and no gi.
For people who don't know, what is float passing? It's kind of a style of pressure passing, right?
Yeah, it's a mix of pressure passing, dynamic passing, movement passing, and it's crushing. You know what I mean? You're leaning into the person. You're getting them to frame and carry you. Which I feel like is effective for all arts. If you're fighting MMA, it's the way you keep somebody underneath you.
Well, this is what I found quite interesting, is because you were telling us in the gym last night. You showed us a few moves from this particular position and the system that you have, and you explained that actually some of it came from your MMA.
It came from me. It came through my MMA experiences. Where I would take somebody down, and then instead of trying to just hold their hips or hold their legs to keep them down, I would use this system to posture up and lean over them and keep them underneath me with my hip pressure, you know, like kind of like a lion's mount for guys that know MMA, know what that position is. It's like a lion's mount with one hook in. So I would use it to keep the person underneath me, and then I would be able to hit them and move forward and keep the pressure on them and not allow them to escape, and not allow them to get up, not allow them to hit me back. You know, my posture was high enough where they couldn't touch my face, they couldn't get away from me, and they couldn't upkick me. You know what I mean? Like I could stay right above them and keep them underneath me. And in MMA, I used it to hit them. And then I realized when I started to really get into professional grappling that, you know, guys were pulling guard and it's hard to pass the guard. And this position was really safe for leg locks. Like, you know, the first time I faced Gordon twice. The first time I ever faced him, I used this position against him. And I wasn't really that good at leg locks. I mean, I knew some, of course. Like I said, I always had an awareness, but it wasn't like where these guys are. They're another level with it. And I was able to keep myself safe with it. And I realized, like, oh, man, this is the system that I need to employ on all my matches. You know what I mean? Because it's heavy. It's consistent.
It is heavy. It's definitely heavy.
It's heavy. It's consistent.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible pressure.
It takes little effort from you. You know what I mean? You're not using a lot of strength on your arms. You're
really mobile at the same time.
Exactly,
right?
and you're on your toes.
I found that really interesting to experience it firsthand because, you know, I've trained with some very, very good pressure passers, and, you know, I've learned from some very good pressure passers, but it was different because it was pressure with that sort of like ability to switch sides.
There's some mobility
move.
there. Yeah. And it's weird because you do have that posturing up. You know, when I think of pressure passing, I think head down, forehead on the mat, just grinding it out. And here you're looking at it. You're above the guy and you're floating above them. You know, it's a very bizarre scenario.
I feel like that's the next big jump in jiu-jitsu.
It's guard passing.
Yeah, that kind of guard passing, and it leads into you know, taking the mount or taking the back. You know what I mean? And either one, you know, that's gonna
good places to be.
That's exactly it. Those are the if you're looking for real estate to hang out in, that's the place. You know, so that to me is going to be the next big leap. You know, it's going to help eliminate, especially some of the guys that are, you know, you saw a lot of guys struggling with passing the guard with guys that are good at leg locks. They're on their knees or they're either darting in and out of the guard, and you know. That's not effective, you know.
Now you mentioned as well, obviously, about the ability to strike from that position and how it's good for MMA. But we haven't talked about it yet. But let's not forget the fact that you are a combat jiu-jitsu world champion.
That's right.
So not only MMA, not only jiu-jitsu, no gi, but you like to unleash the hands one still.
Yeah,
right?
man. I'm like I said, I feel like my jiu-jitsu is 100% effective in all forms. You know.
Now, when this style of you know, they call it slap jitsu, but it's combat jiu-jitsu. When that came along, like, what did you think? You know, because some people are like, it's kind of goofy. But you dived right in, huh?
I appreciated it because, you know, I trained a lot of years trying to perfect my ground and pound and the float system and learning how to just keep somebody underneath you once you take them down. So when I was invited to compete in this event, I was just like, man, this is going to fit right up my alley. You know what I mean? And even training for it, I was like, man, every time I trained with somebody, I could see it in their face. They're like, dude, I do not want to do this with you. Because, one, it's not just, I wouldn't even hit them. I promise you, I spent majority of my training camp for my CJJ world title not really hitting my students because I don't want to hit anybody because I know how hard I have possessed.
You want to keep them as students.
I want to keep them as students, that's right. And then I would use the pressure passing, though, to keep them stuck and then show them like, hey, I can hit you here, I can hit you here, I can hit you here, I can hit you here.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And that made people panic. You know what I mean? That made people go, what? I do not want to be underneath this guy.
No, it's kind of interesting because it's come along as like a new development, something new. There's combat jiu-jitsu and it's a whole new generation of guys getting into it. But maybe because you are an older school guy and you came up and back in the day it wasn't uncommon for a lot of jiu-jitsu schools to have what they called the taparia, right?
Yeah,
which is kind of the training with the slaps.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like one guy puts on gloves and the other guy doesn't put on gloves, and the slapping. Those are all, I think those are all ways that guys that are fighting MMA should be training. You know what I mean? To learn how to do ground and pound right. And if you're really training jiu-jitsu to defend yourself, you should experience that once in your life.
Changes things a lot, right?
It will open your eyes. You will change. You have to do it once. If you're a black belt and you've never done that in your life, you're missing something. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you should go fight MMA, but I'm telling you, if you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you've never done this once in your life, then you don't know what it's like to you really know how to use jiu-jitsu the right way. Because the minute somebody postures up and punches you in the face, you're going to react differently. And you're not going to be playing deep half guard sitting there waiting to sweep somebody, because that's not going to work. You know what I mean? That's going to get you in trouble.
Miserable.
Catch those hands, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of the hands, I mean, I think you were the only person to have a TKO victory via slaps in combat jiu-jitsu.
I call it SKO, slap knockout.
Slap knockout.
First ever.
Yeah.
That sounds miserable.
Bazrud might have one of those
horrible,
somewhere.
but I just can't even imagine how that must have felt, because I mean, having trained like some kind of MMA back in the day, and knowing what it's like to get in bad positions, do you think that jiu-jitsu guys really appreciate how much it changes the kind of how you think about positional concepts and stuff in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, it's definitely going to make your jiu-jitsu different, and you should, like I said, if you've never done it, you need to do it at least once in your life to understand. You know what I mean? And it doesn't even have to be done with somebody that's that good. You can do it with somebody that's not as good as you, to just let them try to hit you, because you have to have that in your mind. You know what I mean? Do
you think people still will do that though? Because especially with the growth of professional grappling and the growth of sport jiu-jitsu as a whole, it used to be back in the day that if you were a jiu-jitsu guy, the only way to make money was to go to MMA, right? And now people can happily exist, and they can have a really kind of lucrative careers without needing to go to the ring or to the cage.
Right.
So do you think that as the kind of this professional grappling option exists standalone, you think people will just they will completely ignore that so they can just focus all on grappling?
Well, with CJJ on the map, who knows? This might take it might take a front seat, in which direction it's going in, right now it's you got guys, man, we got an event coming up with guys like Bia Mesquita and Gordon and Verdum and Josh Barnett and Rustum. You got guys, these are all really big names, doing an event that's potentially gonna ruffle up feathers for other people to want to do. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We don't know what trend is gonna come next, right? That's what we keep talking about.
Yep.
But I think, for me, it's this generation is different than the generation before mine. People on the internet have more say so about what they feel and how they express themselves. Where you see a lot of guys act away in the internet, and then when you meet them in real life, they're totally different. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's hard to say, but I really do think that you should be doing something and using your jiu-jitsu to learn how to defend yourself. And I'm not telling you to learn self-defense katas. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying go do your breakdowns of how you're somebody stabbing you with a knife, because if somebody pulls a knife on me, I'm telling them, like, you can have whatever you want. What do you want? I mean, unless I feel like my life's at risk, I'm not really going to react. You know what I mean?
Fighting back,
Yeah, but you see people today, like get out of road rage and get out of their car. I had a guy try to fight me like a couple weeks ago.
No way.
I swear to God.
That's a bad idea.
I swear to God. He came.
He had no idea.
I asked him, I'm going to tell you the story. We were at a house party on New Year's Eve, or New Year's Eve. So New Year's Eve, right? And this guy was on the dance floor dancing, and I'm sitting on the couch watching, talking to my friend, and he starts to dance and back his way up into my wife, and I stood up and I say, hey buddy, do me a favor, man, don't back, like he was backing his butt up and trying to grab her hands. I'm like, don't do that, please, like, let her, you dance, have fun. We're at somebody's house, somebody I know. I'm like, don't do that, man, please. And the guy turns to me, I'm telling you, he was like 5'3". He turns to me and goes, or what?
Oh, man.
It threw me back for a second. It's like, or what? What? Like, what do you mean, or what? I'm asking you, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, that's not cool, man.
What
don't
a
do
silly
that.
man.
He's like, or what? He goes, I'm not scared of you. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to be scared of me. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm asking you, don't touch her. Don't get near her. You know what I mean? And the guy was like started puffing his chest. And I looked at his friend that was next to him. I'm like, your boy's about to get in trouble, man. You better pull him away. And then the other guy was somebody that was like, he was a firefighter, and he was like, no, man, no. I'm like, I'm really calm. Like, I'm not gonna fight you unless I'm getting paid for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is not gonna happen. You know what I mean? So it just makes me feel like, you know what I mean? But if it was somebody who was a little hot-headed, you know what I mean, they would probably pop off on them. You know, and I'm just like, please. You know
I think
what mean?
actually people don't appreciate just how chill you are, right? Because maybe they see the savage, you know, they see the violent jujitsu, and they have this idea that you're a
all around
kind of
all
a
the time.
nasty dude, you know.
Yeah.
But actually, man, I mean, you know, the first time that we got to share a mat together was in Finland, right before ADCC, when we were all training in the bomb shelter. There's a vlog of it on FloGrappling, and you guys got a roll.
That's right.
And I was kind of a little bit scared for Chase. I'll be honest, you know. It's like 24, 48 hours out from ADCC, and you know, I had only ever seen you roll in competition at that point. I had no idea. And you know, 140-pound Chase comes over, and I'm thinking, shit,
We're about to lose our content marketer.
But it was amazing because he was super technical, and it was kind of a little bit playful, and you know, it was great.
It was perfect.
But it goes to show that you're not like you're not that hardcore dude that maybe people think you are, huh?
No, it's different. I'm definitely different in person than I am on the stage. You know what I mean? If you're putting me and you're putting a referee between us and you're saying go, my competitive spirit comes out, and then everything is fair. You know.
But that's
in
cool
real
though,
life,
because you switch it on.
That's
for
the job
for the bout, for the match, whatever it is. You have the ability to flick that switch, and it's go time, right?
Yeah, it's my job. You know, I'm supposed to do that. You know, so in the match, you know, if you don't like me afterwards, I'll try. I even apologize. I have a majority of the guys I compete against, I apologize afterwards. I swear to God, I go, hey man, I'm sorry about all that. they're like, sorry about what? I'm
sorry
like,
about the nasty bits.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, it is what it is. You know, if I can notice that it made the person feel unease and uncomfortable,
it's almost like you don't want to offend them.
You know, I don't want to offend them. You know what I mean? But I don't want to lose to them either.
Of course,
you know what I mean? Because that's going to offend me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna make you, you know, I'm gonna make you hate that 10 minutes in front of me. You know. So, but that again, it's that's the job. You know, what I mean? That's what we signed on the line for. You know.
Now, I found something really interesting as well, is that you said that in the gym, you're not necessarily like the best guy on the mat either, you know.
I don't think I am. I often get tapped by people, you know, and I think it makes my students appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't always be the hammer, right? Because if you're the hammer all the time, then eventually you're gonna find yourself being the nail. And the only way to learn new things is to put yourself in positions that you don't really want to be in. You know what I mean? And so I find that I compete 100 times better than I train, you know, and I train a lot. So
you're one of those guys who takes it up a level when you go into the tournament.
I learned that years ago through a good friend of mine that I used to watch him train, and he used to get wrecked. And then competitions, this guy would come out and I asked him, I said, how do you do that? And he goes, man, I just, you know, I find that energy that makes me feel like like that, you know, whatever it is that propels you to get that fire inside of you. And I put 100% into it, you know what I mean? And that's what I try to do. Every time before a match, you can watch my eyes. I'm like staring right through the guy that's across from me, and I'm like,
you can kind of tap into that.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get better at utilizing that besides competing all the time, or is that the only thing you can do?
No, you can do that in the gym. You know, you can practice. One of the things that I try to do with my students is I always try to pair them off and like little mini super fights, you know, in the school, and I add that energy because it changes things, right?
For sure.
You could do that in the school and you could see it, you know what I mean? Like, I used to have team events in the school. I would have individuals every once in a while. Like, I'll get a guy who goes, yeah, I trained with Chase and I did this to Chase and it was awesome, and they're kind of like, in a way, telling me what they did, but it's almost senses like they're bragging about it. So I like that. To me, I'll be honest with you, I enjoy when people come tell me and share their stories with me, and I usually use that against them. Usually I pull back then and go, hey, Hal, so Chase was telling me how he did so-and-so thing to you. I want to see that happen again. You know what I mean? And I set it up so that now there's like a little...
You have a little grudge going. I love it.
Yeah, it makes for a good training session.
It fosters
you know what I mean?
the competitive spirit, shall we say. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
But it's friendly, you know what I mean? And I tell them, like, this is friendly. You know, I want you guys to be friends, but I want you guys to, you know, push yourselves, you know? So it happens all the time in my school. And sometimes I have to explain to the students why I do it, because it actually makes them better. You know what I mean?
It's true. And we saw a lot of that. So on the Road to Worlds tour, we were in Ireland at Daryl O'Connell's gym, and he did that. They call it first to score, and they put two guys out in front of the whole class. And as it sounds, the guy to score whatever. Anyway, they win that round. Then TOI has the same thing. They were doing I don't know if it was first to score, but they were doing a super fight style thing. So
got everybody in the gym,
and they're all cheering and making noises.
We do that all the time at Fight Sports. Like, me and Cyborg do these all the time. Me and him personally, we do it all the time against each other, and we see other guys, we do it all the time to them. We put them on the spot and go send them out, and I do it in my school.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for one of those training sessions.
Oh my god,
Like,
I have it. We have it recorded, a bunch of them on WhatsApp all the time. Somebody records them. It is what it is. You know, it's a hard match. It's what makes us better, and that's what propels us to be who we are. You know.
We got around about 10 minutes, just a little less than 10 minutes remaining in this interview, but there's still so much to cover because, this is it. Whenever we get the chance to get a world-class black belt into the studio, there's so many things that we want to ask. But Chase, do we have any other questions you'd like to try and get in there before time is up?
Man, I mean, where do we start? I really don't. Why is ADCC like the title you really want? I feel like there's a whole bunch of promotions out there.
That seems to be the one,
and that's the one you're chasing.
That to me is the one. That's the first thing that I watched that made me kind of like, almost fall in love. You know what I mean? Like that. That first thing that you see, you're like, oh my god, that's the one. That's the one thing I want to do. And to each his own. Everybody has that in their life. Something that makes them go, all right, I'm gonna get this. So for me, it's always been the ADCC since day one. My first instructor that I got white to black with, it was always priority in his book, and it was a lot.
He's multiple-time ADCC champion.
He's Pablo Popovich, correct?
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of that talk in the school. There was always a lot of camps for that. There was a lot of energy
later
focused.
on, being around Cyborg as well.
Cyborg as well came out there and won and did his thing several times.
You've always been around that ADCC, probably much more so than other people. Then I guess
that's right. Yeah, I've been going to the ADCC since Barcelona in 2009, and every year I've been there and witnessed it live and seen it. I mean, it's just, to me, it's the coolest event. I mean, I've been to many worlds titles. I mean, many worlds, gi worlds events. Competed several times as a black belt. But I never had that energy for that, you know what I mean? But I've seen others that go there and that's their dream, you know what I mean? To me, it was never like, I was always like, all right, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to try this. This is good. It's tough, it's hard. But I feel like it's different than the ADCC, where it's like, it's 16 of the best guys. It's selective. It's guys who won their opportunity to get in there. It's guys that are invited because they are the best guys in the world. It's not just random people who signed up to a tournament and you got 97 guys in one division. You know what I mean?
It's 16 of the best.
16 of the best. And then the weight classes are pretty spread out. So it's, either you fit in one or you don't. You know what I mean? And, I mean, it's made, if you look at the guys who've won these tournaments over the years, it's the best guys of all time.
They've become legends.
They're all legends, because it's every single one of them
every other year as well.
It's the Olympics of our jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So that's, to me, been the goal. The dream.
We got a good question come in from the viewers as well. Who do you consider your hardest match to date? Against who? It could be one you won or lost, but is there a specific match you'd like, God damn, that was a war?
Freaking, I've had 3 matches against Gary Tonin, and he's made my life really hard. Every time, whether I won or lost, he made my life hard. So I would have to say, leading into all the competitors of over the years, he's the guy I have to say, like, he made my life hard. He's really a complete grappler, you know what I mean? Like, a guy can wrestle, he can scramble, he can play guard, he can attack your legs.
He's a finisher.
He's a finisher, yeah. I think he's one of those guys that I've had 3 matches with, and every single one of them was not easy, So,
how do you feel about his transition to MMA now? Have you been following it?
Yeah, I have been. He's looking good, He's got his hands are looking, pretty sharp. Of course, his jiu-jitsu and takedowns are always been, pretty well. So, yeah, he's looking good, I wish him all the best. I hope he continues. I tried that run, and that's behind me now. So, it's good to see him go and leave some space for me. Like I said, MMA life is not easy, man. These guys that all, it's sad, to see some of the guys that could be the greatest of all time in jiu-jitsu leave to go to do MMA, like Damian Maia and Jacare, and now there's just a generation of them that keep, walking away from jiu-jitsu because it's hard to make a well living, unless you have a school that runs really well, and it's hard to make a real good living off jiu-jitsu, you know.
It's
sad, but
we have seen it change though, right? Because
it's getting better.
There are
That's
guys
for
now
sure.
that they literally just live as competitors. They don't even have to have a school.
Nope.
And they're doing great.
Yeah,
traveling the world, training, competing, teaching seminars.
Guys like Craig Jones, you see him left and right competing everything. You know what I mean? Like it's awesome to see that. And but I still feel like there's
room to go.
Like it's like that's the 1%.
Yep.
You know, what about the rest? You know, like where are they at? You know what I mean? Like you have to put yourself in scenarios to win big championships to kind of break through. And then if you do break through, then, you know, you have to have that opportunity. You have to have a connection to know somebody, to get yourself in those opportunities to make money. So it's still got a long ways to go. You know, I think jiu-jitsu could be a major professional sport. You know what I mean? I think jiu-jitsu could be an NFL or an NBA, you know, something where it should be, I think. You know what I mean?
You think it has that potential?
It's the freaking best martial art in the world. It's the greatest martial art. Like, think about it. There's still guys who have karate schools out there making a ton of money. You know what I mean? Like, how is this possible? You know what I mean?
Who do you think could take jiu-jitsu to that level?
FloGrappling could take
Hey! All right.
Heard it here first. Yeah, man. If FloGrappling's already jumped jiu-jitsu to the next level, you know what I mean? It takes a couple more things to make jiu-jitsu get to the next level. I really truly believe jiu-jitsu could be a major sport, a major league jiu-jitsu.
What's the role of personality to you? I feel like every other sport has major superstars and frontmen and women that kind of pave the way for publicity. Do we need that in jiu-jitsu?
Well, we already have some of those guys doing that. You know what I mean? You're watching guys like Andre Galvon and Gordon Ryan talking about $1 million match on the internet. You know what I mean? These guys, they're kind of pushing that curb. You know what I mean? Like, does Andre Galvon deserve $1 million? Hell yeah, he deserves $1 million. Somebody give that man $1 million and put him in front of Gordon, please. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we need. You know what I mean? We need opportunities to create things like that. You know what I mean? And it's just not there, but it's gonna get there. And
you'd like to see the professional jiu-jitsu go even further, establish like a real professional league.
Yeah. And there's that possibility. There is that. It just needs the right idea, you know, to take that to the next level. You know, where true sponsorships like Reebok and Nike come around and start giving athletes money, and the jerseys start getting switched, and players are not thinking, oh, my team and my lineage and my school. No, they're thinking financial benefits, you know what I mean? Like longevity, where, you wear a jersey because that's your state and that's your team, and that's where, where jiu-jitsu should be, And I think, and people are like, oh, that's never going to happen. Yeah, it can happen. The truth is there's people that sell themselves short and they don't see the opportunities there in front of them. But, it just takes a little bit of the right person in the right place to make those moves happen. And I personally, that's my end career, that's my goal, is to try to change jiu-jitsu to make it better for up and coming guys. I'm an older guy. I'm not 25 anymore. You know what I mean? I'm like close to 40. So I'm still in the game, pushing away, but it won't be forever. And when that time comes, I'm gonna help. I'm gonna try to help at least change the game. So
awesome. Well, I hope we do see that big change for the next generation. Vagner, it's been absolutely awesome having you here in the studio, for joining us here for the podcast, and we got some great content coming to the site as a result of your visit. We got some techniques coming. We got an episode to fix my game.
Float passing pressure. Yeah, man. Check it out.
Match analysis and commentaries. It's been a lot of fun, but it's been really cool to get you here and to hear your thoughts about jiu-jitsu. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Thank you guys for having me. And like I said, if it wasn't for Flo and the support of the work you guys do here, jiu-jitsu would still be in the Stone Age, and we'd still be selling DVDs, and so it's true. And looking at magazines to see if you can see your name in the magazine, like, oh, my name didn't come up. I did so good here. You know what I mean? And the game has changed big time, and we have to give credit where credit's due. So I really do appreciate you guys having me here today and helping jiu-jitsu grow. So
awesome.
I'm
man.
Fortunate.
I think we're gonna have to do this again sometime, right?
I'm 100% down. I told you guys that. You can make me a steady guest. I'll be here.
All right. Well, guys, we'll see you again next week for another episode of Fistful of Collars. Thanks.